Join us for our review of the BMW X2 as the M35i, this new top horsepower spec. A detailed tour on exterior, interior and the sporty driving experience for you here on Autogefühl in Full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go! So before we start with the real driving part, some acceleration preview for you. Being in the sports mode, let's fly. Look, that was already 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour with a quite decent sound, and wow, this performance is really very nice. So that gives you some promising fun for the rest of our driving part. And let's take a look at the launch control. Already the compact vehicles by BMW now have a very big front grille, not as big as the bigger models, but still quite impressive and a very horizontal stance here on the road. The X2, you can see it, it's not really a full SUV or something, it's more a crossover. We'll go more into that subject later on. First of all, the 35i or M35i has this cerium grey color scheme. You can see it here at the frame of the grille. You also see it here in the lower part. Of course, this version, as a top sports version, has stronger lower bumpers. Then the headlamps, they are now, as you see it here, LED, but they usually start for a normal X2 with halogen. The LED is optional or standard for this M35i model. And by the way, this beautiful blue, bright blue color is called Misano blue. Yeah, that could be something we call here Thomas blue on Autogefühl. This is always an impressive look right here. You can see those vertical fins in the double kidney are always open in this case here. And you can see those crossbars just behind it in front of the radiator. And this is, just a very impressive look. Also, just from a middle distance, see this wide open double kidney and then those crossbars there, right there. They give some more stability. 4.36 m, 14'3" or 172 inches is the length of the BMW X2. So this is the compact segment. Again, the Misano blue color, very beautiful. And you can see one very unique feature is that the X2 features an additional BMW logo right here at the C-pillar. The wheels go from 17 to 20 inch in general for the X2. This one here, the M35i, comes with 19-inch wheels. Those ones you can also see at the moment right there. The brakes are also in a bigger dimension, 17-inch for the whole brake complex. Then the M logo right there, and it's the same when you take an X2 with a normal M Sport package. Same goes for the M35i. Then you get the wheel arches here in the vehicle color. A normal X2 would have those crossover plastic wheel arches, and the M Sport X is also a little bit different. So just imagine it would be an M Sport pack just visually, and then they put even something more on top. For example, those cerium gray caps here for the mirrors, and you can also see a contrasting lower bumper right there. So what do you think of the design? Of course, the line here raises a little bit. Black frames also to stress the sporty look. Do you like it? And a short preview as for the suspensions. A normal X2 would start with the base suspension, a fixed one. Then option you can get an M Sport suspension, minus 10 millimeters. That's standard for this one here, the M35i. And then optional, you can also get an adaptive M suspension. That's the one we're going to test today, because last time we drove the X2, we tested the fixed M suspension. What are the differences? Which one should you pick? I'll tell you all about that in the driving part coming up soon. In the rear, the X2 in general looks a little bit more dense, more than a crossover. The M35i has this integrated spoiler right here in vehicle color that makes it really way sportier just visually, especially from the rear and also from this rear side view. Then you got the special badge right there and two real exhaust, and they also give some decent sound. We heard that also in the introduction. Then you can see that those tail lamps, they are quite wide and have those beautiful LED with a swinging form. So overall, especially here in my favorite color, I think, it does not look like an SUV, more a crossover, definitely something between a hot hatch and an SUV. So what do we have under the hood? In general, for the X2, there's a 2-liter 4-cylinder diesel available, several horsepower specs. Then there's a 1.5-liter 3-cylinder petrol engine. And then there's a 2-liter 4-cylinder petrol engine, either with 192 horsepower or this one here today in the M35i, 306 horsepower. And 4.9 seconds is the acceleration figure to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. Pretty powerful. There's a launch control available. We showed you that initially. Pretty spectacular. And also some more exhaust sound and so on. So also got an extra bar here to stiffen up the car. Very interesting also. And a nice engine cover here with the M Performance badge, because it's not a true M model. They're M Light models. They call M Performance. And that's also the badge you can see right here. This is the car key, pretty light, and he in this case also has this M color logo at the side. Then we open the door and door closing sound. I think we heard that better, so not too convincing as for this aspect, but what's convincing is the rest of the interior build quality. Soft touch at the top part. Then we got this, it's not carbon fiber, but it's some like carbon fiber style inspired inlet here. Then a SensorTech leatherette inlet right here. All soft parts here. Also some decent space for bigger bolts at the inside of the doors. Then you have this M35i badge, entry badge right there. The steering wheel, also an M steering wheel then, since this is the M Performance model. And we'll soon get more detail to the instruments and the infotainment and stuff. Let me first talk about the seats. Those ones here are the optional M Performance seats with the integrated head restraint. Beautiful work. And we'll also test the comfort very soon. You see here, especially in the shoulder area, you get more support. And you got this hole right there, which is somewhat inspired by racing seats where you can put the seatbelt through it, but that's just a design element right here. And you see in this area where you need most cooling, you get some fabric, and then on the outside you have some Alcantara to be held tight, especially when you go a little bit faster. And it's of course, really cozy just to touch it, and also great sustainable material. So pretty cool as for this one, but you can also get a base seat. And again, the general overview for the EU, you have a base fabric seat, then you have a sportier seat already, where you can also get fabric Alcantara mix. And then this one, but this one here with the integrated head restraint is not available for the US. In US, you get the other normal seat with a separate head restraint. And then you can get a black and beige you can pick it in Sensatec. That would be a full leatherette. So, yeah, I mean, in Europe you get some cool Alcantara, but in the US you get the very good Sensatec. So they have both good seating options for different markets. But again, strange that some markets have then different limitations. That's how the manufacturers do it. And now let's get inside. And it's not the highest seating position. It's not a true SUV. In the X1 you have a little bit more SUV feeling, and then in the X3 you have the real SUV feeling. However, it's a little bit higher than you would have, for example, in the BMW 1 Series. Steering wheel can be adjusted in height and reach with the manual function here, but totally fine with that. This one here has no sunroof or whatsoever. I have the seat in the lowest position with the 1.86 m or 6'1", still some headroom left there. So even as a tall adult, you're just fine here. This seat here has an electric control right there. You can also lift the rear part up. That's also recommended for some longer drives or to vary it a little bit. And for longer legs, you can manual and lengthen the lower seating area. And also interesting that those super sport seats, how I like to call them, with the integrated head restraint, they're actually quite comfortable. So sometimes those top high-end super sport seats are less comfortable. In this case, I have the feeling they're a little bit more comfortable than the other seats. However, if you're in a market where just the normal sport seats are available, you'll also be just fine. You know, all of them have somewhat their pros and cons. Interior overview, it is a mix of classic and modern elements. First of all, the steering wheel. When you have the M steering wheel here in the smaller compact models, it's not that asymmetric as you would have in the bigger BMW models, where you have a little bit thicker here in the upper part. I don't like that that much, just a personal preference, but I really like this form here. It's a perfect size and very good to handle. Then you can see this design element here again. It's, you know, it's nothing as for a special material, but let's say it imitates the carbon fiber look. Some more old school elements here with a lot of buttons. Those are hotkey buttons. You can, for example, like press 1, then you have a home address or something. Then what I like, it is also an old school element, but I just like to be able to control the temperature while driving in an easy way. Although those rubber, fields around it, they have somewhat a good grip, but I'm not sure how they will take it over time. Would expect a little bit more quality as for this part than here. And then there's the top screen that is at the moment available, but soon there will be also some changes. I'll soon tell you more about that. There's also with touch, and again, soon more details as for the software we have right here. And those instruments, they are mostly analog with just some digital elements here. And we also have a head-up display, all three, soon more details. Now, what I want to tell you is, at the moment, it starts with a 6.5-inch screen. That would be a smaller one. Then optional, you can get the 8.8-inch screen. That would be the one you see here, with the operating system by BMW 6.0 or the 6 Plus, so-called. The very current one, 7, which also has this free voice input, is at the moment not available and will also not be available later, but they will soon update this screen here to an optional 10.25-inch. That would be a little bit bigger then. So when you order this vehicle, probably you will also be able to already get the 10.25-inch screen also for the X1 when it gets a facelift. But not for the US. The US will still get the 8.8-inch screen, and the reason for that is, now be surprised, is the airbag right here. Because in some of the US states, you do not have to be buckled up by law, and therefore BMW has to design the airbag in a way that it's a little bit, better as for the protection when you're not using a seatbelt. Yeah, it's not really clever not to use a seatbelt. But then, they have to change the design a little bit, and therefore you cannot get the bigger screen in the US. Well, those are very interesting market specifications, again, according to different laws. A little bit strange, but also interesting, isn't it? The head-up display is a very useful option. You can keep just your line of sight, and you can see the allowed speed and the current speed, and also some GPS information if you have a destination set. Those instruments are really interesting. I said part analog or part digital because, first of all, the very, very analog part is this. You can really touch this ring around, and then it looks like nothing. It just looks like a screen, but it's not all a screen. So when you turn it on, those parts here are just lighted up. You can see those arrows, those are real arrows. The lower part, this is really a digital screen, but even when it's turned off, not sure how you can see it on camera, you can see the numbers here. They're just not lit up, but they are still there. It's not a screen. And then when you light it up here with the ignition, then it looks somewhat digital. So it's a really tricky one. Now the infotainment software up close, the map, you can very well read it, and also here the pinch and zoom works quite fast. That's pretty cool. So it's a touchscreen, but you can also control it from the lower normal control lever with turning and pressing. Here, by the way, 9.2 liters on 100 kilometers. It's a realistic consumption overall. You can get it lower if you just use cruise control, a little bit higher than if you hammer it a little bit, but this is a good average. That would be some 26 mpg US or 31 mpg UK. When I turn on the engine, we can set in reverse gear. Then we can also see the rear view camera, which is quite decent, and those helping lines also adapt to the steering position. And you also have those PDC signs here. When you get closer, the sensors give you some information. There's also the automatic parking function available. If you want to do that, most of the time, I think it's just faster to do it yourself. The middle console, the lower middle console, you can see here in the front part, you can slide this open in two parts split. This is a normal USB plug here to connect your smartphone, for example, or to charge it. Then here, you got some adaptive cup holders. Just put the key right here. And then it's also all clean. Your smartphone, by the way, if you want the Apple CarPlay connection, you don't need that, because here in the BMWs, you have a wireless CarPlay connection, but no Android Auto. Then you can see it's all leaned towards the driver, so it's basically like a split to the co-driver. And the co-driver also has the soft part side. So the back part here, from your view, is soft. And then here to the driver, this is hard pack. Maybe should have been also soft here when, especially while driving. Then there's a classic gear lever right there. When you put in reverse gear, you have to press the left part and put it in the front. But when you want to put the normal driving gear back again, you don't have to press it, you just put it backward. That's, of course, easy. And for the launch control, you have to put it also left here to this sport mode. Not possible when the engine is not running. ESC, either on, sport ESC, or hold it to put it off. But that's, of course, not recommended for street use. The sports mode, by the way, you can either go to Eco Pro to save some fuel, or sports mode then turns up the gears. Eco Pro would put the throttle a little bit softer. Here, when you have the adaptive suspension, it also changes the suspension. If you don't have it, it would just change how the car shifts and so on. Then we have an electric handbrake, and also this classic gear, classic infotainment knob where you just turn and press, and also have some hotkeys to use. And last but not least, this armrest with a nice leatherette cover is also very well attached. You can put it up like this, or then also some different angles, and the middle part can be flipped up, and then there's here an inductive charging platform also. And below the armrest, another USB charger. Here is then USB-C. Glove box, by the way, there's not really much. If you have the manual right there, then it's almost already blocked. Let's now get inside. Shoe tap. So, and it's not the longest car, but still some decent space here. I can sit here as a tall L, and I think we have to scroll back to the initial X2 review and compare how I was sitting in there with the other seat in the very front. We should compare that. That will be very interesting. Here I can still put a hand in front of my knees, and also the sports seat have a soft back cover. So if you're a little bit taller even than me, then it at least doesn't hurt, as would when you would have like a hard cover at the back of the seat. Headroom wise, it's also okay. You can also put a hand over my head, so you can indeed drive this vehicle with 4 toy adults, no problem. Then you can also vary this back part here. You can put it a little bit more upright like this. then you sit very much upright, or then again a little bit more leaned backwards. But overall, I think, some decent comfort here, although it does not look like that from the outside. The X1, by the way, is somewhat the same vehicle. This one here, of course, a little bit sporty in design, so the X1 is a little bit better as for the rear here. But still, considering it looks very, very cramped from the outside here, you can still have a decent seating comfort here. So this was me, you see it right there in the initial X2 review, and you've seen my hand there. So with the seats we had in the initial one, the normal sport seat, it was like this. So a little bit more leg room than with those seats here. So they cost you a little bit of leg room because they are thicker over all those seats. But the thing is, they have a soft back part. And the other ones where you have a little bit more leg room, they have a hard shell back part. So it's a good decision to put it soft shell here in the back part, because when you have a little bit less leg room, then you would maybe touch it, then it's still soft. So I think you can live with both variants here in the rear. So we here at Autogefühl like to pay attention to details, and here the soft touch actually inside of the doors. This is the front inside of the doors, and see how far I can touch it in here. It's actually quite soft, not too soft, but at the inside of the rear door, it's still also somewhat soft, but not as soft as at the front door. Very interesting, but they really paid attention to the detail also here in the rear. Oh, and by the way, have you seen those seat belts here? It's an option. There we go, with the M colors here too. But very beautiful detail. I also like that here in the M35i, you have the same Alcantara fabric mix at the back seats, so a very sporty setup here too, also great in styling. Then you have Isofix at the outside of the back part seats each, and armrest with some cup holders. You can also use this latches here to flip. Here we go. So that's the way it works for all of the seats. Also, for example, here for the outside seats. When you want to push it up again, of course, you have those two levers, two levels I showed you earlier. Then you need to push it back again. And at the middle console here, there is somewhat a middle console still available. So the middle seat here is not that well usable. You can, of course, for shorter trips or something, and you have two USB-C ports right there. You flip the logo to access the trunk right there. And we have some luggage set up here for you today. So, just as an example, you can also fit in the cabin trolleys in a vertical way. 470 liters is the capacity figure. For example, there's also a separate net right there. It's also good to secure some smaller things. And I would say, let's clean up the rest. And now we got it all empty for you, that you can have a better view how it looks like this. And the length is a little bit less than 80 centimeters. The width is just about a meter. So those are, let's say, normal dimensions. The separate compartment right there. So, that reduces the loading sill and you have some more space below that. And then to the seat as I would be sitting as a driver to the very rear, this is about 1.55 meters. And by the way, you can just fold the middle part here, for example, as a ski hatch, but you can also just fold the complete part here just like this, and then we're all the way. Welcome to Thomas's Driving Lounge with the BMW X2 M35i version, and here we can already accelerate a little bit. We go to sport mode, we hear a little bit more exhaust sound already, and hit the roll. Whoa, that was already 70 to 110, because I need to reduce the speed to 100 is allowed here. So that goes very quickly. It's the strongest 4-cylinder engine at the moment they offer, 306 horsepower. And together with this all-wheel drive, you can also get the traction to the ground indeed. Well, when you reach the city again, you rather go back to the comfort mode. And this vehicle here is also equipped with the adaptive suspension, so that also does change the damper settings then. And I would really recommend to go for that one. So either when you buy an X2, stick with the base suspension. Do not pick the normal M suspension, which is just very stiff. We tested that one in the initial driving event in Portugal. A little bit too rough, especially for bad roads. This one then here with the adaptive suspension, and that really helps because it gives you a span between the comfort and the sportiness. And here in the comfort mode, it's actually quite reasonable. Also, let me go on those potholes or something. It's actually quite okay. And then when you go to the sport mode, suspension goes a little bit stiffer. Not sure if you also can just pick that up by listening. Maybe if like something of the camera equipment is rattling. That only happens when you're in the sport mode and going into some potholes. That's really interesting. It's maybe also a good indicator for you. So it's really a big difference then. However, if the road is good, then it's really fun in the sport mode. It gives you a little bit more feeling to the road. But then you can really have the choice. When it's a good road, go to the sport mode. When it's a bad road, leave it in the comfort mode. And you always have the chance when you're in the sport mode still to just floor it out a little bit better. And you can also use the pedals to, no matter which mode are you in. So let's shift down, for example, here, third gear, and then wow, that goes really very quickly. The sound is of course boosted via the speakers. Yes, but it sounds actually quite good. So you maybe also heard some exterior shots already, and the car sounds actually quite decent for a 4-cylinder. Then of course on the inside it's even boosted a little bit more. So if you would not know it, you could suspect maybe it's a little, 1 or 2 cylinders more. But power-wise, of course, with this acceleration figure, 4.9 seconds, that's, without doubt, pretty quick. So the X2 in general rather handles like a compact hot hatch, so to say. Here, very good feedback from the steering wheel. And in some of the new BMWs, I have criticized, especially in the new 3 Series, that you have some of a dead zone here in the very low angle areas of the steering wheel. And that's not the case at all here. So even when I just do some very slight movement, there is a reaction. And I really love that with vehicles because I want to be in control, and it's not uncomfortable at all. You know that even a little command does something. And to me, that's how it's supposed to be. At the same time, you don't have to steer that much. So the steering is somewhat progressive. Also, when we reach the next corner, you'll see how much I have to turn in depending on the angle of the corner. But overall, it gives you a very good agile feeling. Those sport seats here are also very supportive. Again, for taller people, the compact models of BMW in general will give you a little bit less comfort than their mid-size model. That's, of course, something pretty natural. However, if you're a little bit smaller than me, then it's no problem at all. And for sport seats, they are still decently comfortable. Also, when you compare them to the normal sport seats they offer, those ones here are the option with the integrated head restraint. Both are doing actually a quite good job. I told you earlier that you cannot get them in all markets, for example, not in the US, those optional ones. But then you'll also be just fine with those normal sport seats. It's no problem. But of course, pretty fancy ones. Visual alone. So we'll turn just right here. It's a nice indicator sound, by the way. So it gives you quite positive premium feelings. Sometimes we have vehicles, BMW cars here all over the place, near Munich. So sometimes we have cars which have indicator sounds which are quite weird. But this one here actually sounds very, very nice. So now we get to some nicer countryside roads, also very nice with the LAC, and this car really tempts you to go slalom all the way. It's just so much fun just to go a little bit right and left, and of course you have to watch out. Maybe if the police is behind us, is this guy drunk? We need to stop them. But again, a lot of fun, and you would not say, it's an SUV, I lose the driving fun or something. It's not so high SUV-ish. The X2 in general, also if you compare it to the X1, has a sportier setting, also sits a little bit lower. So the X2 to me rather comes to this crossover styling, so less SUV, more crossover. But we know, why not offering it? If you want that little bit more SUV, then you would go for the X1. If you want more SUV, then you would go for the X3. So that's the models that are close in the lineup, and of course we will present the all-new BMW the all-new BMW 1 Series soon to you here as well. Then also compare those then to the X1, X2, and so on. How are they actually different? Next roundabout, and it's always great when you reach the next roundabout. See here, you don't have to turn the steering wheel that much. Picks up the speed fantastically. That's really cool, like those accelerating out of the corners. If you hammer it even more, this one here, the top sports model, also comes with the mechanical differential lock in the front. That's different than to the base models. You need it, for example, when you accelerate out the corners, with a lot of punch, and maybe if it's even a little bit wet on the road. However, since this one here is all-wheel drive, so it's a front-wheel based platform, all-wheel drive on demand, so there goes also some torque to the rear on demand, and when you really need it, the more you accelerate, the more torque will be transported to the rear, maximum 50-50. Since this is an all-wheel drive car, then the front differential lock is not that important, how it would be when you just have the front-wheel drive. And overall, the all-wheel drive is a good solution to give you more grip when accelerating. Of course, it does not change the grip just when steering, that's just physics. But also some more safety for winter drive, for example, especially when you have so much power as you would have here. And indeed, still in sport mode, it's also quite decently comfortable from the suspension. So I have not driven this adaptive suspension yet. I really have to say I would go for it. It's about 1,200 euros, in Germany at least, extra. So I would rather leave it with a base spec X2 if you don't want to spend so much money. And when you go for this top model here, then probably you want to spend more money anyway, or can spend more money anyway. And then it's also making sense to go for this adaptive suspension, since this one here, the X2 35i or M35i, to be very precise, is not available with the base suspension, so you definitely should pick up with this adaptive suspension here. So it feels good in the city. You still have somewhat a decent overview. It's okay. One problem is that, of course, the rear window graphics are somewhat slim, so that is reducing visibility. In the rear also, when you put some higher things in the trunk, and I look back now to this rear mirror, the top cover of the trunk is standing a little bit up because our luggage stuff was a little bit too high. So that is reducing visibility even more. So far, very decent ride, great steering, very nice suspension, great power also from this engine. Yeah, just when I think about the price, it already gets a little bit unattractive, but leaving the price aside, it's really a very decent ride. Oh, noise insulation, by the way. Didn't mention that one. So we've all been driving 100 kilometers, so about 60 miles, and that was still quite silent. So we can also say nothing bad about the noise insulation. They also, it's quite on an equal level like the X1, and they also done a good job here together with the things we mentioned in the interior overview, that they really worked on the interior build quality with BMW in the recent years. Well, and since we are in Germany today, we also have the chance to take this one here on unlimited Autobahn part in the sports mode and see how is this with a small displacement in the higher speed regions. I would say, let's find out. and that's 200 kilometers an hour. Wow. And now with the brakes, oh, they also apply very well. So back again to 120 with just slightly going on the brakes. So wow, that was some pretty decent acceleration. And have you seen how the acceleration went further, even if we were in those higher speed regions? And that's something we usually only know from bigger displacement engines. So pretty impressive as for that one. Wow, well done. And since we're also on the motorway now, it's also time to test the assistance systems. Cruise control can be activated here at the left side of the steering wheel. There's also a traffic jam assistant available up to a speed of 60 kilometers an hour. So you can also get some steering support, and you can change, because this one is the adaptive ACC, or adaptive cruise control is ACC. So you can change the distance to the car in front of you here with the left button. And at the moment it's 120 kilometers here at the moment, and then you can set it here, press it up, go in 10 kilometer steps up or down, and when you press it just slightly, and you can run like 1, 2, 3, you can do 1 kilometer steps. So we see it here when we approach this truck. I'm not doing anything with, oh, that's interesting. Do you hear that? It's like a little bit bumpy on the road now, and the rear cover of the trunk is going a little bit up and down again because our luggage is a little bit too high. Also have to consider that. So here now the speed has been reduced since we were facing this truck. And of course we can brake out again when we want to go for a little bit more unlimited speed once more. As for the lane keeping assist, by the way, so let's see. When we go off here to the left, does it do anything? No, does not do anything as for this one. So I would say, well, what are they doing there? At least we're going to overtake a truck once more. And there's someone slower there in the front. So you can see here, even in some parts where unlimited speed, there's usually a lot of traffic then again. And then you're also limited by traffic, of course. Really fun to use these shifting pedals. Also in different situations. And still decent comfort here. So, and when you go back to the comfort mode, you feel it's also softer here on the motorway. So for long-term run, I would definitely recommend just the comfort mode. And even if you're in the comfort mode, you still have this kick down. So when you really use throttle, still here, that still works, you know. It's just in the sport mode, you have a little bit more sound, and the reaction is even more spontaneous. Of course, the most important thing is when you're going for those high speeds, always remain a proper distance to the car in front of you. That's definitely rule number one. So, here we go again. Wow, and how stable this car really remains all the time when you're right here. That's really a lot of fun. So, it's actually quite effortless, and also still at those high speeds at the moment, 160 kilometers an hour, still reasonable here as for the noise insulation. So definitely well done also in that respect. And now to our conclusion with the BMW X2 M35i. Just visually, it's a little bit similar to the M Sport package you could already order so far. But of course, it's all about the engine, and you have abundance of power. It was a really great drive, great steering. I can also recommend this adaptive suspension, and really some nice performance, especially we've seen it in the launch control in our initial part. Really impressive. Then also the interior with a good processing quality, and especially those seat offerings, both, you know, the super sport seats we get here with the Alcantara and fabric, normal seats with Alcantara and fabric, also the SensorTech offerings in the US, also great offerings you have there overall, so they really paid attention to the detail there. And you still have some decent package, although from the outside it looks kind of small, you still have some room there also in the rear compartment. So a lot of good things to say about there. With the BMW X1, You have a little bit more space left then, although the difference is not too huge. Of course, a little bit more practical. We've shown that also in our review earlier. But then, the price. The X2 in general starts at about 35,000 euros and also $35,000 in the US. And then if you think about this top sports version, in the US it's not that more expensive because you get also not so much extra equipment included. It's about 45K, and in Europe and Germany 55. And that hurts already. And if you then spec it up with some more extras, then it gets even more expensive. So also have to take that one here into account. But for sure, it's, how shall we call it? It's a segment of hot crossovers. I think that's probably what nails it most. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please give us your feedback on this vehicle and tune in next time.